welcome to the latest sociology lesson. This one is on experiments. Just to be clear, for every lesson I've sent you, you should have had a YouTube link and you should have had a PowerPoint. If you are missing any of those, can you let me know and I'll just email them straight over to you. So just please let me know. So what we're looking at today is experiments. So every lesson, all of next year lessons, we're going to go through different research methods, and we're returning to our normal platform of doing 3 separate paragraphs, paragraph 1, 2 and 3. Now, essay planning for research methods is a bit easier than normal because there's a way you can remember it. Now, if I just show you, I don't know why my laptop is not showing up. Oh, actually it is. Okay, so if I fiddle around with it, no, it's just not going to work. So if I can just tell you what side I'm on, if you can look at it as we go rather than me showing it in the background, and just click on, just look for yourself. So I'm going from side 1 to side 2. Now this is the kind of rough outline of what you want for a 20 marker on research methods. You want a paragraph on practical, a paragraph on ethical and a paragraph on theoretical. So remember it spells PET, and a paragraph on each. So it's actually in that sense a lot easier than your normal 20 markers. With research methods, they can only ask you 20 or 10 markers, exactly the same as when we do family or media. The irritating thing is it's split across 2 papers. So some of it's on paper 1, some of it's on paper 3. So next year you are going to have revise all of research methods for 1 10 marker on the first paper and still be ready for it on the next paper, which I know is slightly irritating, but it's okay. Everyone's in the same position. So we are going to be mostly looking at 20 markers, and then as we go a bit further in the course we'll go back over starting to look at 10 markers. The reason we do so many of those, I know it's not your favourite things to do, guys, but it's because it tends to be students' weakest area, and I don't want it to be something that holds you guys back. I want you all going in there getting the best possible grades. Okay, so side 3, you will see that I've asked you to outline one experiment you did whilst you were at school. So that might, obviously in the science lesson, I'm guessing. One I remember when I was at school is we had to freeze golf balls, and we had to heat golf balls, and then we had to drop them to see how they bounced. Now, the reason I'm asking you to look at an experiment is because it's the exact same procedure as when we do sociological experiments. Can I just give you 2 minutes, like literally in a couple of sentences, can you describe your experiment? Okay, so with your experiment, hopefully you would have seen, with my golf ball one, the golf balls all had to be set at a certain temperature. And we all use regimented ways of studying and recording evidence. Now, it's the same when we do a lab experiment within sociology. Everything is set out in a very set way. So we will have a look at that. Okay, now if you go on to slide 4, you will see it says the first key term of today's lesson. So before we get into any paragraph writing, we just need to learn a few new key terms as it's our first lesson on a particular research method. A hypothesis is a prediction of what your results are going to be, and you either test to prove your hypothesis or you test and you might prove your hypothesis wrong. So my hypothesis might be I predict that students work better if they eat a bar of chocolate before a lesson. To study that, I would need to give every student a bar of chocolate and monitor how well they do within a lesson. So a hypothesis is you are isolating out one particular thing you want to study and doing that. Okay, now to do that, if I obviously fed everyone a box of chocolate before the lesson and monitored how well they learned, I would have results, but it wouldn't be clear whether it was the chocolate that had an impact. And that's why you need a control group and an experimental group. Now the control group, they're there to test against. So if I was to do that study again, I would need to give my experimental group chocolate as they came in. My control group would have the exact same lesson, but they would not have chocolate. So imagine I gave all of 12A chocolate before the lesson and none of 12D, but then I did the exact same lesson for each of them to see how they responded. that allows me to see, is it the chocolate that's having an effect, or is it something else? And because of this, you can isolate out your variable, you can isolate out the one thing you're trying to study. You cannot do this in any other type of research method. So for example, if I just came in and observed people teaching, I couldn't work out if it was the teacher having an impact on them, the other students around them having an impact. Experiments allow you to just isolate out the one thing you're trying to study. This is as complicated as it gets today, guys, so do not worry if you're struggling. Those of you who do psychology will already sort of be okay with this. Now within sociology, it's really good. We are going to get into our 3 paragraphs now. Within sociology, you need to be able to relate things to a particular study. Now the study I've picked is Milgram. Now I've picked this for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I've picked it because a lot of you will have done in psychology, and why give yourself more work? So I've picked something that a lot of you will already be aware of. Secondly, I picked Milgram's study because it's a really famous study, so there's a lot of revision information that you can relate to and support you in this. Right, if you look under where it says practical issues, where it says notes, I have put a hyperlink to Milgram's experiment. Before we go any further, can you just quickly watch Milgram's study? It's really important that you do this so you have something to relate the points to. Okay, hopefully you've watched that video now, so we can move on and start actually planning this essay. Now remember, you use PET to help you out with this. So first thing we're going to talk about is practical issues. Practical issues are anything that makes it difficult, time consuming, expensive, or any restrictions that you have. Now hopefully when you've watched this experiment, you'll see there's a number of key things involved. Firstly, there's trained staff you need. You need an actor playing the guy who does the experiment, the scientist, and you need an actor playing the other participant. Think about the problems that's going to cause. Why is that going to be difficult? What are you going to have to do to get those people on board? 1, you're going to have to train them, and 2, you're going to have to pay them. So think about what problems that would cause. Okay, secondly, that room doesn't just exist. Someone has created that room for that experiment to take place in. So again, think about why that's time consuming, why that would be expensive to sort out. And not only is the location important, but also there's a lot of actual technology involved. So you can see recording devices were used, the actual thing to make it look like they were electrocuting was used. So again, that is all going to add to the cost. So that's a practical issue. Okay, so in terms of evaluation though, sorry, can I just get you to quickly fill in that sheet I've sent on practical issues before we go through evaluation? So pause that and fill that out. Okay, now before we go any further then, we want an evaluation point. So as you've probably gathered, it's incredibly difficult to set up an experiment. You have to set it all up from scratch, you need to hire staff, and it is very time consuming and expensive method. But why do sociologists do it then? And this is our evaluation. Sociologists do it because by setting up an artificial situation, this is the only way that you can be sure it is your variable, in this case, the person in a position of power, that is having an effect on your participants. If you were to study authority in a classroom, you don't know if it's the actual teacher's authority that's having an effect, or the participants around them, or the subject you're teaching, because you've got no control over that. Experiments give you complete control. So with this, can I get you please to write that in your own words as your evaluation, and that is your first paragraph. Okay, now your second paragraph is your ethical issues. So in terms of harm to the actual person doing the research, the actual researcher, you may have noticed he's not actually doing the study at all. He's detached from it, and he is away from the research. That means there's no risk to him. However, the participants, you could probably see in a video, a lot of them are feeling distressed, upset, and that's because of 3 reasons. What I'd like you to think about is how the following would have caused harm, and write a sentence for each. All the participants were lied to. How is that going to have a negative impact on the individual? Secondly, all the participants were put under stress, and that's something you could easily see in their face. They were under stress. And finally, the participants would have left the experiment with the knowledge that they would have killed someone in this situation. So explain how that would cause harm to someone. Can I get you to pause that and have a go at explaining that in your own words? Okay, now with regards to evaluation, we have said that it causes harm. There's a couple of ways that you can go around. The first is by saying, yes, those people caused harm, but it was justified. So we were justified in causing harm because if they knew about what the experiment was, we wouldn't have got valid data. We wouldn't have seen how they would have acted. Equally, the reason Milgram did this study was because he wanted to prove, everyone at the time thought that people who were involved with the Holocaust were evil or psychopathic. Milgram was the first person to say actually they were in a form of social conditioning where they were following obedience. So it actually changed our attitudes in a good way towards German people. So in those two ways, you could argue that the harm caused to these participants was justified and was for the greater good. So you can use that first of all for your evaluation point. Or I would say that's your more complex evaluation point, and I would go for that one if you're going for an A and A star. Or alternatively, what these participants would have all experienced after the experiment is what's called debriefing. Debriefing is essentially where you get given counselling and support, so they would have been informed about things that would have made them feel better. So for example, they would have said, well, everyone did this, you're not unusual, you're not psychopathic, it was a usual response. And they then would be given the right to withdraw and say, I don't want the data linked with me to the research. So it makes it slightly more ethical because you're managing the work. Managing the harm, sorry. Okay. Paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 then you've done because you've got your explanation and your evaluation. Okay, paragraph 3 is theoretical issues. So firstly is reliability. So if you remember, reliability is can you repeat the method in its entirety. So when we say reliable, can someone copy exactly what you've done? Now someone did copy what Milgram did later on. Darren Brown, who lots of you might know about, they repeated his study later on. What I'd like you to do, if you look under the reliability side, there is a link to Darren Brown's study. What you should be able to notice is the study is almost exactly the same. How in 3 ways, even the speech, the things that the scientists and the learners say is exactly the same because it's scripted. The layout of the room is pretty much identical and the way the experiment is done is identical. The reason that the researcher is able to do that is because it's an artificial situation, so you can copy every single aspect of it, make notes of how you did it, take photos of what you did, and you will see that you were able to copy. On the picture on the side, I've shown you some of the notes that Milgram kept, so you can see exactly how he ensured that his experiment was reliable. So the key is, though, experiments are reliable because they're an artificial situation that you can repeat. You can even repeat that. You can even get the exact temperature in the room replicated. Okay. Second aspect of experiments is validity. Now, you unfortunately are not going to get very valid results. So, as I mentioned before, what Milgram was trying to study is why Nazis killed during the Holocaust. That's what he was aiming to study. Now, what you can see is the experiment he did actually bears very little relation to the Holocaust. The research had to be set up in an artificial environment. So, you can think you are not going to see how people truly act in an artificial situation. You cannot replicate the outside world in an artificial situation. All the things that could shape how someone acts, you can't replicate in an experiment. Right, the next thing is the test was not similar to something a person would be asked to do in real life. It was a very kind of artificial, weird kind of test, so it would not have seen how people naturally acted. Very few of us would be asked to do anything similar to that at all. And finally, the people knew they were being watched. Now you are going to just quickly get a new key term here, which is the Hawthorne effect. All the Hawthorne effect means is you know you're being observed and you change your behaviour. Think about when you've been in a lesson and someone's being observed. You might feel a bit nervous, they might talk a little bit differently. That's the Hawthorne effect. It's changing your behaviour because you know you're being watched. And finally, last one is our Regis one, and this is representative. And in this study, 636 people took part in the study. It sounds like a lot, but if you think this is making a claim about like all people involved in the Holocaust at that time, so it's not representative. You're never going to be able to do a representative experiment because you're observing small groups of people to see how they act. So you're not ever going to get representative data. And if I could get you to answer those two questions on why. Okay, now in terms of evaluation for this, the problem that we can say for this experiment is it completely ignores that humans have free will. So the results said that 98% of people would give a near lethal dose of electricity under observation. So we've essentially argued a fact. We've argued the fact that people respond to obedience. If I take you back to the start of the lesson, you can say a fact from science, from whatever science experiment is. So it's a fact water boils at 100 degrees. We are applying that same method to get a fact in sociology. However, humans aren't like water or a rock or a golf ball. We've got free will, and it's wrong in whatever situation to try and claim facts on human behaviour. That would be your evaluation. Again, this is quite complex, so if you're not sure about anything, let me know. At the end, to check your understanding, I've put a series of questions. So if I could get you to answer those questions, please, to check your understanding. If you want me to, if you don't know the answer to any, let me know, because this is just check that you understood the topic. And also, just before you go, I don't know what you guys are up to keep sane. I'm definitely gone insane because I'm currently knitting my cats a blanket. But I hope you're all okay. I do miss you guys a lot, and I can't wait to get back to normal teaching and hearing all the gossip. And thanks to whoever recommended Archie. I watched the first episode of it and it is really funny. Alright, see you all later. Bye.